Lights, camera, action. You filmed your video, hit your mark, nailed your lines, and told your story. Cut, print, that's a wrap. The video is done, which means you're halfway there. Reviewing the footage, you realize you love how you presented in the second half of the first take and the first half of the second take. A conundrum. Well, my friend, it sounds like it's time to do some cutting. What is up, filmmakers? It's Jordan with Nonprofit Filmmaker, and I must admit at this point that quite a few of our episodes have made recommendations assuming you know the ins and outs of editing well enough to assemble all of our so-called elements. Music, images, text on screen, audio sync clips, and B-roll. All of those require some serious post work, so yeah, I understand why you would like some pointers on the world of video editing. This is part one of who knows how many. Today we're going to cover some of the recommended editing programs for your phone and your computer that won't break the bank. And it's important to note that we're not sponsored. The opinions expressed here are our own. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button, knowing that ours is a voice that you can trust. All right, everybody, let's talk NLEs. Today, virtually all editing programs are non-linear editors, so why the distinction? Well, in the days of early film, like literally film, devices like the Moviola would cut reels of film themselves, and you'd have to move through a roll of film to get to the bit you wanted. It had very limited max speed, and it would take forever to find the clip you were looking for unless you were extremely well organized. Anyway, all that to say, if you start doing your own research out there and you run across the term NLE, that's what they're talking about. Modern editors today can access any clip. You can jump to any part in it and pull bits out willy-nilly. Even pull the same bit out multiple times. This also means that the modern NLE are non-destructive as well. Your editor isn't modifying the original clip, it's referencing it, it's looking at it, and it's playing back parts of a bunch of different clips in a timeline in order to create the illusion of a singular video sequence. But until you actually render it out, it's just reference. All right, cell phones. I know some of you out there don't have laptops, or I assume that you don't, or maybe you're traveling and away from your work computer. Whatever your reasons, I want you to know that you can do all of your editing on your phone. I'm not gonna say it's easier or faster, but hey, your footage might already be on your phone, and maybe you'll publish through your phone. So why bother with the hassle of mass file transfer to a computer? Now is a good time to mention that these cell phone apps have a free version and a subscription model. The free model generally has like a watermark and an upload limit. That's fine for 1 or 2 videos, but you'll want to consider the subscription on serious regular content. KineMaster. The first program we're gonna look at is KineMaster. It's available for iPhone and Android. It lets you record directly within the app, and it gives you all the tools to layer different audio and video clips together to assemble a professional package. KineMaster has a really easy step-by-step workflow built into it so you won't get lost. It walks you through adding all your clips, photos, and audio. After your clips are added, you live in the timeline where you can click and drag to trim clips, rearrange them, and a few simple tools for more exact refinement. It has options for text, effects, color correction, transitions, overlay graphics, and multiple layers, all completely customizable. I won't go into too much detail on how KineMaster works exactly because there are some great tutorials out there, including one my friend made on Skillshare, linked in the description below. If you don't have a subscription to Skillshare, there are still some great YouTube tutorials made by KineMaster themselves that can help you get started. And KineMaster released a comprehensive reference guide that you can look at if you ever get stuck. The next program is Adobe Rush, also for iPhone or Android. This is built by the same Adobe that built the industry standard Adobe editing software suite, including, among others, Premiere Pro, After Effects, Media Coder, Illustrator, and of course, Photoshop. Rush is like the slim and trim version of Premiere for your phone. Early releases of Rush were frustratingly limited in their capacity, good enough for a straight cut, nothing more than a basic series of clips, though they've made some great strides as of late. One of the biggest upsides to using Rush is that they've incorporated a lot of the cutting-edge tools like optical flow clip retiming, aka slow motion, the essential graphics panel for animated titles, and audio mastering and correction that are all found in the professional software. That's an advantage of a company that went from making industry standard editing software to a phone app. It's that they brought a lot of their innovation and technology with them. KineMaster is working the other way, starting from a phone app and building up to a better editor. They've got lots of conveniences, but lack the power behind Rush. The other handy feature with Rush is that your project is accessible from your phone, from a tablet, or your computer. The same project, it's always saved to the cloud, so you can start your edit on a plane ride home and finish on your work laptop in the office, or vice versa. Any changes you make are reflected across all your devices simultaneously. Rush, like KineMaster, opens in a media browser where you can select all your clips to begin with, and then live in the timeline for the rest of the project. And just like KineMaster, it has a built-in camera too, so you never have to leave the app. The downside of more power is it's slightly more complicated. Compared to the hand-holding of KineMaster, Rush doesn't have an obvious workflow. So yeah, you can build things in whatever order you want, but you also have to keep track of everything yourself. What I mean by that is you can make things very complicated very quickly. And it's important to impose a workflow on yourself. For instance, if you started applying some audio correction to your dialogue, you should probably get all your clips finished in one go, so you don't forget to go back and finish some afterwards. My takeaway with Rush is, if you ever think that you might move to a more professional editing software like the Adobe Suite, Rush is a good place to start and a great jumping off point if you're going to transition into something like Premiere Pro and all of the powerful tools it has to offer. A select few of you might be wondering why I'm not talking about Lumafusion yet, the most powerful iOS editor, mostly because I don't know it. I've never worked with it, and I've heard good things, but I've also heard that, well, it's a lot. So I've included a link in the description below. If you want to dive in, go ahead, but personally, I think if you're gonna try something like Lumafusion, you might as well dive into one of the next programs I'm gonna talk about, computer editors. I assume many of you have computers already, a work laptop or a desktop, or both. I'm actually super curious what your setup is, and I bet your fellow viewers are too. Tell us in the description below. I'm sure that'll spur some conversations with a few EDs out there. So we've talked about phone editors like Rush, which is technically also available on your computer, but now I'd like to introduce you to some completely free desktop editing software. First up, Davinci Resolve. If I were learning editing today, right now, at this very moment, I would consider myself lucky to start in Davinci Resolve. This program is one of the most advanced pieces of editing software on the market. It rivals very expensive programs like Final Cut Pro, developed by Apple, and Premiere Pro, built by the aforementioned Adobe. Davinci Resolve is an entire editing suite with professional visual effects, audio editing, color grading, and of course, editing, all wrapped into one massive, sleek program. And it's completely free. I know, can you believe that? Yes, there is a paid version, but you can honestly live without 90% of the tools that it'll give you on most of your projects. The only things that you're missing out on the paid version are advanced procedural noise reduction and grainy clips, high-resolution exports, and slightly more efficient exporting. So yeah, stuff that you don't necessarily need. We here at Progress Now use Davinci Resolve for that final polish. Now, the downsides, any of you coming from the phone apps, Resolve is complicated, horribly complicated. It's not a program for the faint of heart. There's lots of amazing tutorials out there so you can get your feet under you for basic editing pretty quickly, but Resolve does no hand-holding for you. It's easily the most complex editing software out there, and I'm including Avid in that assessment. If I can leave you with one takeaway, it's worth getting into. Be prepared to love editing and love troubleshooting because there's plenty of both. But like I said, it's the program I would be working with if I was starting today. Linked in the description below. iMovie and alternatively Windows Movie Maker. I imagine several of you have had at least a chance to play with one of these in your lives. These very constrained programs have less options than KineMaster or even Rush and are operating system specific. The great thing about them is that they're free, easy to use, quick, and usually pre-installed on your machine. In fact, these programs are so rigid in a workflow that you can dive into them with virtually no tutorials or troubleshooting, so that's a plus, especially if you need to turn around something simple really quickly. No links below, it's on your computer, go to the applications folder and find it. Good luck. Premiere Pro and Final Cut 10. Each of these programs could easily warrant their own entire series, and they do have those. The pros and cons of each has to do more with the workflow that professionals have and the types of content that folks are producing. For our purposes, these programs are almost identical, and yes, Final Cut uses a magnetic timeline versus Premiere's more traditional one, but ignoring those details for a moment, the big difference is that Final Cut is only available on Mac. but Premiere Pro is available on Mac and PC. So compatible, in fact, that you can start a project on your Mac and finish it on your PC without any issues. Final Cut Pro has a steep initial cost, $300, certainly the most expensive single thing I've talked about in this series to date, but you pay once and you own it for life. Premiere Pro is subscription-based. By itself, it's $20 per month, and that works out to almost $240 a year. But you can also bundle Premiere Pro with several other apps included in the entire suite for a whopping $50 per month. One big advantage to Premiere Pro is there are constant updates for it. It gets a serious facelift about every 3 months with smaller updates in between. And as long as you're paying the subscription, all of those updates are included. These two softwares are not only professional, but they are industry standard. And that means they do a lot of things to make sure stuff can be made broadcast ready. It has advanced tools to help conform multiple video codecs, frame rates, and bit rates seamlessly. I can dynamically link with dozens of other dedicated applications for a system-level approach to editing. What I'm trying to say is a lot of what you're paying for isn't stuff you're probably going to use. Unless you're in the process of hiring a full-time dedicated video editor or looking to become one yourself, I'd steer clear of these more expensive options until you absolutely can't live without them. They stack up expenditure quickly and have a steep learning curve before they really become useful. So buyers beware. Other software. Maybe some of you have done enough research to discover Vegas or Hitfilm. I am personally steering clear of these programs, not because they're terrible. Certainly they're just as capable as any of these to make your next video, but they're just so rarely used and not mainstream that there's not a lot of support for them. And both Vegas and Hitfilm use a lot of gimmicks to try and draw in new users. Weird visual effects that you won't find much use from in your day-to-day edits. They're simpler programs and cheaper or free, but based on my limited experience with them, they're not my first pick, not with the other amazing options out there. And certainly not if you're looking to move into professional software in the future. If I can give you one positive towards both of these programs, they're simpler to use than Resolve, Final Cut, or Premiere. A happy in-between with more power and options than iMovie or Windows Movie Maker. Nevertheless, they're in all respects a dead end. Their futures are not guaranteed. Vegas has already jumped parent companies twice, and Hitfilm is really, really new. They're also not a good jumping off point for your growth as an editor, so tread carefully. I don't want to say don't get them, but consider it. All right, enough about what program to use. Hopefully one of these stuck out to you and you're ready to get started. I was going to cover the basics in this episode, but it's run on long enough, so we'll save that for next time. Make sure you get notified when that episode goes live by hitting subscribe and ringing that bell. Until then, why don't you share this with someone in your coalition or in your org who's looking for the next editing software that they should be using. Till then, I'll see you next time.